Jeff, just play it out for us. If a country, generally speaking, is becoming less entrepreneurial, play that out down the road. What does that look like 10, 20 years from now?
Well, if you think of the numbers in our economy right now, 98% of our businesses are considered small businesses, right? That's under 100 employees. And they are employing close to half of our private sector workforce. And they generate over a third of our GDP, just over a third. And so any type of risk hitting those communities, those drivers of those numbers could potentially have a profound effect. And so if we look at one scenario where, let's just say we shift those numbers a little bit so that some of our GDP is no longer generated by those small businesses because they no longer exist, well, that's going to shift to our medium and our large enterprises. That increases our dependency on those organizations. So we might lose, 10,000 small businesses, and that GDP is now generated by a handful, 3 to 5 larger businesses. If one of those businesses exits our economy for whatever reason, could fail, could offshore, could just want to relocate their headquarters, we don't have that diversity in our economy, that resiliency that we would have had if we had been relying on those small businesses to generate those numbers.
Okay, so Joel, this is problematic. And the question obviously is, why is it happening?
Well, it's happening for lots of reasons. Let me first say it absolutely is problematic. I was listening to our finance minister table the budget yesterday, and one of the things she clearly said, and she was right, is our young people are looking around thinking we're not going to have the opportunities that our parents did. And we have to ask the question, why? Well, it's fundamentally because for the past 5 decades or so, we've had a productivity gap, we've had an innovation gap, and an economic growth gap. And the way to address that is by having Canadians do better work, more efficient work, create better products and services that command higher value. And of course, our businesses can do it, but so can our entrepreneurs. Our entrepreneurs are going to be a key factor here. And what really worries me, to add on top of this, is we are at a very important moment in time where AI is about to transform over the next decade our economy and our society. And if you look at the last big technology, the internet, we had these great companies coming out like Amazon that reinvented retail around the internet. And we had Facebook reinventing social networks. The same is going to happen around AI. But the only way that we can get there, we can have some of these future Amazons, is by having lots of entrepreneurs. And that's why it's just so worrying for me. This is more worrying now than ever before. Now,
well, yeah. Joel says this is a problem that's been going back 5 decades, but I have to presume that COVID was a particular shot in the ribs to this whole issue. Is that a fact?
Absolutely, absolutely. And to me, the idea of creating more Amazons, creating more Facebooks, that to me is not necessarily what we want. I mean, there's all sorts of concerns about Facebook and Amazon and having everything, all of our eggs in one basket. I agree that AI is, the new thing, but I think that there are systemic issues that are in place that prevent certain demographics from realizing their value.
Like what?
Like all of our social safety net right now, in terms of income support, maternity leave, all of these other things are tied to traditional employment. It's all about the workforce. And when the government calls for more women to become entrepreneurs, for example, there's no policy support, there's no infrastructure for those women who become entrepreneurs and then fall into the 1/3 that fail. So there needs to be, I think, from the government in order to boost entrepreneurship, there needs to be some kind of policy infrastructure to actually support that.
Well, we got an honest to goodness example right here. You started a business. Tell me how you did it.
So I actually started in my last year of university, and we were taking an entrepreneurship capstone course. I went to Western, the Ivy Business School, and I remember our professors told us to start by finding a problem that you're passionate about solving. And I think that's the key thing with entrepreneurs is they're working on the world's to-do list, and all the challenges that we're facing around sustainability and climate change, all these types of technologies that we're creating are going to solve these world's problems. And so I think in addition to the economic growth and some of the other points we're talking about, it's also being able to solve these problems that we're facing and actually bring some of these technologies to market.
So you are living the life of an entrepreneur right now. How old are you, can I ask?
25.
You're 25.
Yes.
You're a small business person. You're an entrepreneur. You do not have the security of, say, somebody who works for the province of Ontario in an office job down at Queen's Park.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
So what's your life like?
It's definitely hard, a lot of challenges. A lot of people say that you face the highest highs and the lowest lows, sometimes within the same day. You're trying to, you do things like this where you're talking about your business, but you're also trying to manage your employees, manage your inventory, manage your cash flow. So a lot of entrepreneurs, about 73%, according to the BDC study, struggle with their mental health, struggle with these types of challenges where they're trying to navigate through the ups and downs of entrepreneurship. So it's definitely hard, but you know that you're making an impact, and especially in my space where I'm working on menstrual health, something that impacts 50% of the population, I'm actually waking up every day and solving these problems and making an impact for a lot of different people.
Where'd you go to high school?
I went to Lawrence Park.
In Toronto.
In Toronto.
Did you at any point while you were a high school student think to yourself, of course I am going to be an entrepreneur?
Definitely not. It's not something that's taught enough in high schools, and I came from an immigrant household where entrepreneurship was not normalized as a potential career path. All my parents wanted was for me to get that stable corporate job, and I got it. And I came home one day and said, yep, I'm going to quit that job to work on this tampon business that has no funding yet, nothing available. But I think it is important to teach more students that this can be a career path. It's not just about encouraging more students to be entrepreneurs, but encouraging them to embrace the skills that you get as an entrepreneur, embracing this growth mindset where it's okay to fail, where it's okay to take these as learning opportunities, where you can learn about so many different types of areas of business like marketing, finance, operations, encouraging them to have resiliency. And whether or not they become an entrepreneur, they take these creative problem-solving skills into the organizations that they work for, and they think differently and they try to solve problems. So not just encouraging more people to become entrepreneurs, but embracing the skill sets that you gain.
Nadia, you know your big problem? Lack of energy. You are just not really energetic enough in the way you approach the world. No, I'm kidding. All right. You just heard her talk about high school. Now, you're in the post-secondary sphere, where by that time people already have a sense about what they want to be. But what about her point about high school? Do we put enough focus there on letting people know that entrepreneurship is an option for them going forward?
I think definitely not. But and Nadia's story is super inspiring. I was smiling and happy the whole time. That's what we need. We need a lot more Nadias in this country. And I think we do need to start in high school. We need to start putting that thought in people's heads right from the very beginning, that this is a possibility, this is what it could look like, these are the opportunities around it. I know you're asking about high school. I can tell you a lot more about university level.
Sure.
So at Waterloo, our approach really is that it's sort of a pyramid. And so if we want to get as many entrepreneurs coming out of Waterloo as possible, then we need to reach out to as many students as possible. So we're reaching out to more than 1,000 students every year, involving them in some degree, trying to get them interested, just thinking about the idea of entrepreneurship. And so step one is, how do we pick those people that might be interested? Those that are interested then go to the next step of the pyramid, and we get them thinking about, okay, what are the big, as Nadia was mentioning, what are the big problems in the world? And how do you try and solve some of those? But just think about problems and get them engaged with problems. And then you can think, okay, well, how do I create a startup to solve those problems? How do we support them through it? How do we give them the business acumen? How do we give them the mentorship? And then you can start thinking about funding, creating ventures, et cetera. Some of these numbers that you were mentioning earlier, we have a decrease in entrepreneurship overall. I can tell you at Waterloo, it's alive and well. We've doubled from 2022 to 23. We more than doubled the number of student entrepreneur teams. I think we now have something like 500. I could have that number wrong, but over 500. And it's quintupled since the pandemic.
Okay, here's the thing though. You talked about a pyramid, which of course has a big base at the bottom, but ultimately there's a lot of failure on the way to the point where by the time you get to the top, it's a very small number. Don't you really want to create a square as opposed to a pyramid?
Ideally, I think it's very hard to create that square. I think part of entrepreneurship is there's going to be lots of failures. A lot of people are going to be pulling out. And that's why you have to make that base as wide as possible.
Okay. So tell us, Jeff, what do you need to know as a young entrepreneur in order to have success later in life?
Oh, that's a great question. I think, as Joel was mentioning, one of the big lessons is that failure is not a bad thing. It's quitting that is the bad thing. So you're going to learn the most from your failures or the things that don't go well or as well as you thought they would be when you were looking through with rose-colored glasses and thinking that we were going to change the world on day one. So that would be my number one lesson to people. And when they come in our doors is, even if idea one doesn't work, being an entrepreneur it's a mindset. It's kind of a lifestyle.
Yeah, I've heard if you're not failing, you're not trying hard enough.
Absolutely, absolutely. So when you fail, try to find out, okay, what did I learn from this? How can I pivot? What do I need to tweak? So that way the next business I look to get started in, I have a much higher likelihood of success.
The Agenda with Steve Paikin is made possible through generous philanthropic contributions from viewers like you. Thank you for supporting TVO's journalism.